This is Clarence Thomas, one of the 9 justices in the Federal Supreme Court of America. And according to a report by ProPublica, Clarence has been receiving gifts and donations from a certain businessman. And he has changed certain decisions based on what and who is bribing. The American Supreme Court is supposed to be an institution built on principles of justice and impartiality. But behind its grand facade, there are some deep-rooted issues, not just a corruption crisis. In this video, we break down what are some of those deep-rooted issues and why the American public is losing its faith in its own Supreme Court, one of the most important institutions of a government. So let's get started. The American judiciary has various levels of courts, 3 on the state side and 2 on the federal side. But the final court of appeal in the country is the Federal Supreme Court. It is the highest level of court and is supposed to be the most impartial judicial body within the country. However, recently there have been allegations of ethical violations, corruption, and political bias, at least by some of the justices. And all of this while the nation is trying to find solutions to some of its biggest issues, like abortion rights, gun control, and healthcare. Going back to the report by ProPublica, Justice Clarence has been criticized for his close ties to a billionaire by the name of Harlan Crow, who has funded Thomas's lavish vacations, has given him gifts, and is also paying for Clarence's grandnephew's tuition fee, which comes to about $6,000 a month. God knows where he studies, but it's expensive. All of this while he has decided on certain cases pertaining to Harlan Crow's businesses. And it's not just Clarence alone, his wife is involved as well. You see, Justice Clarence somehow failed to report his wife's income, specifically from a conservative organization that advocates against certain court rulings, or in other words, lobbies against certain court rulings. Remember this picture that shows all 9 of the Supreme Court justices. 3 out of those 9 have some kind of corruption allegations against them, with substantial evidence. And it's no doubt that the American public has been losing confidence in its Supreme Court over the years. Here's a graph showing the percentage of Americans who have an unfavorable opinion of the Supreme Court. It is the highest it has ever been in the 3 decades this survey has been conducted. So what has caused this decline in confidence? There are mainly 3 factors. The first one being money. Of course, money has to be involved. The majority of the countries in the world have elaborate procedures to appoint a justice. However, in America, the selection can be made by the president alone. He can choose whoever he wants. Judges are appointed by presidents who can outright be bought by the biggest bidder. Whoever contributes the most to their campaign gets to control the president to a certain extent. And this buying of influence over a president is legal since 2010 thanks to a decision made by the Supreme Court. The Citizens United decision in 2010 was a turning point. It granted corporations and unions the ability to spend unlimited funds on political campaigns. Basically, if you're a rich billionaire or an organization who has a whole bunch of money to contribute towards a campaign, you can do so and buy yourself a whole bunch of influence. There's no legal issues there anymore. Now, as a billionaire or a rich donor, why would you not fund a campaign of a president and then influence the politician of your choosing? While you're at it, why not influence the same politician into electing a Supreme Court judge of your liking? After all, a politician's in power for just 4 years. Meanwhile, Supreme Court judges have no terms. They can literally preside on these court cases till they die, giving you a lot more control for a lot longer. This ruling opened the floodgates to massive campaign spending, allowing wealthy donors to sway public opinion and potentially impact judicial appointments. The strange appointment process of justices where a president can choose whoever he wants, combined with significant financial contributions of these rich billionaires, it has raised a lot of questions about the impartiality and the independence of the court. And as a result, there has been a growing perception among the people that the justices can be influenced by financial interests. Now, the second big reason for the downfall of the Supreme Court is the ideological polarization of the Supreme Court. Now, by definition, the Supreme Court is supposed to be an institution which is impartial, with the sole task of interpreting the Constitution and ensuring justice for all. However, in the recent years, the court has become increasingly polarized along the ideological lines. And instead of being impartial, a given Supreme Court could be either left-leaning or right-leaning. That is actually an option now. Every time a president chooses a justice, they're appointed based on their perceived ideological leaning, which is problematic. When such justices proceed on cases, a lot of their decisions tend to align with the political agendas of whoever elected them. instead of being a strict constitutional interpretation. Out of the 9 justices, 3 are left-leaning and 6 are right-leaning. This 3 to 6 ratio is very clear when you look at the decision to overturn Roe versus Wade case. It had a 3 to 6 split. Furthermore, the appointment process, coupled with justices' lifetime tenure, has created an atmosphere where political leanings heavily influence court decisions. Because of this polarization, big decisions that impact millions across America are being made by 9 people, literally based on what they feel like, not what the Constitution says. Now, after listening to the first 2 points, you may be wondering, why are they not being held accountable? We should do something about it. Certainly, we should. But here's where the third point comes in. There is literally no accountability for these men and women. The Supreme Court operates with minimal external oversight. The justices themselves are not directly accountable to the public. Because unlike other branches of the government, the Supreme Court does not face regular elections or any punishment for their wrongdoings. Justices can only be removed through a voluntary retirement, a resignation, or impeachment for misconduct. Now, you might be happy to hear that there's this impeachment process. However, impeaching a judge is literally impossible. Let me explain. You see, for an impeachment to work, the Senate has to first agree that a judge needs to be impeached. Now, let's say deep within, all Republicans want to get rid of Clarence. Let's just assume they want to, even though it would be harmful for them. Let's say they want to. They still can't do it because if they impeach Clarence, that means President Biden, who's a Democrat, would be able to elect a justice. And guess what he's going to do? He will elect someone who's left-leaning, which put this whole system into a bit of a gridlock. The Senate will never agree to impeach someone. That means these judges can just sit around, keep getting bribed, and make decisions that impact your life. And the same is true the other way around as well. If there's a left-leaning justice who needs to be impeached, the Democrats would literally do the same thing because they don't want the other side to pick up a polarized justice. So what are some of the solutions? There has to be some solution. It can't just be all a gridlock. Now, there are a lot of solutions to this problem, like implementing term limits or setting up an elaborate process to elect these justices. After all, these are 9 people who will literally decide how a country runs to a good extent. You see, there are solutions, but it's very unlikely that they would be implemented. Any reforms that are proposed would require either a constitutional amendment or a legislation by the Congress. Both the options are very difficult and controversial to achieve and would face strong opposition from various groups and interests. You see, there is no simple solution other than you, the folks, the Americans, ask your politicians for a fairer Supreme Court. Regardless of which side you're on, you all benefit from having a fairer and balanced Supreme Court. And as a Canadian, all I can do is break down what's happening around you and ask for you to subscribe to the channel because it helps a lot. I will see you in a week or 2 from now. Thank you very much for watching this video. I hope you learned something today. I learned a whole lot.